How does the Genesis creation story compare with other ancient creation stories? I'm Caleb Blida, and this is 6-Minute Theology, where you can learn simplified theology for your everyday life. And in today's video, we're going to begin a study of the theology of Genesis 1 and 2. And in this series, we're going to explore what does Genesis teach about the nature of God, the nature of creation, the nature of man. It's going to be a really interesting topic. So with that in mind, let's ask the question, how does Genesis compare and contrast with other creation stories, such as the Babylonian creation story, the Greek creation story, the Egyptian creation story? And when we analyze these differences, we'll see several of the key distinctives that Genesis is trying to drive home to its audience about creation. And I want to draw your attention to 4 of those distinctives. The first is one creator God. The second is creation from nothing. The third is that creation is orderly and good. And the fourth is that humans are made in the image of God. These are all unique aspects of the Genesis creation story. So let's start off with the fact that in Genesis there's only one God. This is different than all of the other creation myths. You have obviously the Greek pantheon on Mount Olympus. In Babylon, you also have a pantheon with gods such as Marduk and Tiamat. And then in Egypt, you also obviously have numerous gods. And this is in stark contrast to the Genesis account, which starts at the very beginning in Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So Genesis starts off with a radical claim of monotheism, that there is only one God. And this leads to the next aspect of the nature of God's creative act, that he created out of nothing. Now in the Babylonian creation myth, what's called the Enuma Elish, there's actually really gruesome story of how creation arose. There's this battle between the gods, and then Marduk eventually defeats Tiamat, who's the goddess of evil and chaos and the sea. And then Marduk actually creates the cosmos out of the body parts of the dead goddess Tiamat. So it's really gruesome, and it's definitely not creation from nothing. Now in the Greek story, the gods themselves actually arise from a pre-existent universe, and it's debated among Greek philosophers whether the universe always existed eternally or whether it did have a beginning. But the Greek pantheon themselves arose from a pre-existent universe. Now contrast with the Genesis account, where it says that God is there in the beginning and he creates the heavens and the earth. And other scriptures expound on what this means. Hebrews 11:3 states, "By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible." In addition, Colossians 1:16 says, "For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him." So not only is there one creator God, but this God made everything, visible and invisible, physical and spiritual, all from nothing. Now the third aspect of the Genesis story that was so radical and unique was its claim that creation was orderly and good. In the Babylonian story, as already mentioned, creation itself arose out of a violent and gory conflict between the gods. And the Greek story is not much different. In this story, humans arose out of a violent conflict between the gods of Olympus. In fact, one of the gods, Prometheus, stole fire and infamously gave it to humans, giving them the ability to create and to make civilization. And as a result, the god Zeus actually punished humans, and here's the way he punished them. He gave them the first woman, Pandora, and this woman unleashed all kinds of evil and suffering upon men. Creation itself is intimately tied to conflict and chaos and evil. Now contrast that with the Genesis story. At each stage of creation, God declares it good. And then when God is finished with his creation, in Genesis 1:31, it says, "And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good." It was all good. It was all orderly. It was all peaceful. And that would have been a radical idea to ancient people. And this leads to the fourth and final distinctive that I want to touch on today, and that is that humans were made in the image of God. This is different from the Babylonian myth, which teaches that humans were actually made to serve the gods and to relieve them of their work, that the gods were so busy working and they needed to create these slaves to do their work for them. Now, the Greek myth is a little bit less bleak, but none of the other stories claim that men are made in the image of God, to represent God, to be his ambassadors on earth. And Genesis says this very clearly. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So these are some of the unique aspects of the Genesis creation story. That there is one creator God, that he creates the whole universe out of nothing, that creation is not embroiled in conflict and chaos from the get-go, but it is peaceful, it is orderly, it is good. And finally, that humans have innate value, as they're not just made to serve the gods, but they are made in the very image of God himself. And in the midst of ancient civilizations that were full of war and violence and just a bleak view of the world, Genesis has a brighter view, a more hope-filled view, a more peace-filled view. And that, again, would have been revolutionary to the people of the time. Thank you for watching 6-Minute Theology, and stay tuned to keep learning simplified theology for your everyday life.